when CIA drugged American citizens without their knowledge and called it science. Behind closed doors, people were hypnotized, tortured, and broken, all in the name of national security. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's real. It happened, and the full story was almost erased from history. And they called it MK Ultra.
Breaking and entering and not getting caught is a very difficult activity.
The CIA's MK Ultra program was a secret Cold War mind control research effort that remained hidden for decades. Project MK Ultra was the code name for a covert CIA program begun in the early 1950s that tested drugs and other mind control methods on human subjects, often without their knowledge. As a CIA summary notes, it ran from the 1950s through the late 1960s, using unwitting US citizens as test subjects. Only in the mid-1970s did Congress learn of these abuses through Church and Rockefeller commissions, because CIA Director Richard Helms had already ordered virtually all files destroyed in 1973. In recent years, declassified documents and news investigations have begun to piece together the full scale of MK Ultra crimes, revealing the terrifying experiments using drugs, hypnosis, isolation, and sensory deprivation on often unsuspecting Americans. MK Ultra grew out of Cold War fears. In the 1950s, US intelligence was gripped by reports that Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean forces were brainwashing American POWs in Korea. This led CIA Director Allen Dulles to approve secret research in 1953 aimed at developing mind control drugs and other techniques to counter enemy spies. As historian Stephen Kinzer explains, CIA chemist Sidney Gottlieb worked in the 1950s and early 60s to develop mind control drugs and deadly toxins that could be used against enemies. Soviet advances in psychology and even rumors of Soviet psychic warfare convinced US officials the agency needed its own arsenal of mind manipulation tools. The goal was to inoculate against enemy brainwashing and to find a truth serum or drug that would allow the US to control human behavior covertly, who led the agency's effort to find ways to use drugs, hypnosis, and other methods to control human behavior. Many major CIA figures backed the program. For example, Helms, who later became DCI, and others envisioned an intelligence agency that favored bold, often covert action, and where controversial projects like MK Ultra could secretly take root and flourish. Under this umbrella, the CIA recruited numerous researchers and institutions, from university labs to psychiatric hospitals, to do MK Ultra sub-projects. For instance, CIA front foundations funded experiments by Dr. D. Ewan Cameron in Canada and other leading scientists in the 1950s to 60s. In short, MK Ultra was a CIA program authorized at the highest levels and executed by a small group of handlers and recruited scientists. The human toll was severe. One famous victim was Frank Olson, a US Army scientist. In 1953, Olson was secretly given LSD by his CIA colleagues. 10 days later, he died after falling from a hotel window in New York. His death was first ruled a suicide, but later government investigations and a lawsuit revealed the CIA had drugged him without his knowledge. The agency eventually paid Olson's family a settlement after admitting LSD was involved. Another case was Harold Blauer, a New Yorker who died in 1953 after an experimental injection of a mescaline-related drug in a CIA project. The CIA's own memo confirms Blauer died 2 to 1.5 hours after an injection of an apparent overdose of 450 milligrams of EA-1298. Blauer's estate sued and was paid in secrecy years later. In Canada, dozens of Dr. Cameron's patients were reduced to a childlike state by the treatments. Families of victims spent decades fighting for recognition and compensation. In 1992, the Canadian government offered $100,000 to some of Cameron's former patients who were profoundly harmed, but hundreds more received no redress. In January 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra files burned. When senators and a presidential commission began looking into US intelligence abuses in 1975, they found almost no paper trail. As the CIA's own document history notes, Helms's destruction of files forced investigators to rely on sworn testimony and on a relatively small number of documents that survived. In the mid-1970s, the truth finally began to emerge. On December 20th, 1974, CIA Director William E. Colby met with New York Times reporter Seymour Hersh in his Langley office and confirmed that the agency had been conducting domestic surveillance, break-ins, and even drug and behavioral experiments under programs like MKUltra. 2 days later, on December 22nd, 1974, Hersh's expose ran on the Times' front page, thrusting these secret operations into the national spotlight. Public outrage prompted President Gerald Ford to sign Executive Order 11,828 on January 4, 1975, establishing the President's Commission on CIA Activities within the United States, the Rockefeller Commission.
The necessary measures to ensure that the intelligence community functions in a way designed to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans.
And just over 3 weeks later, on January 27, 1975, the Senate voted 82-4 to create the Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, better known as the Church Committee. By the 1990s, the CIA posted some MKUltra documents online, and in the 2000s, historians obtained more. As of 2024, the National Security Archive has published a new collection of over 1,000 declassified MKUltra records. These documents fill in many details. Officially, MKUltra ended long ago. The CIA now maintains that the experiments in drugging, torture, and mind control were an aberration and have been abandoned. During 1977 Senate hearings, a CIA director even declared it totally abhorrent to think of using humans as guinea pigs. However, some former insiders remain skeptical. Victor Marchetti, a former CIA executive, warned as early as 1977 that claims of complete cessation might be a cover story for the agency. In practice, the US intelligence community has continued related research under different names. For example, from the 1970s through the 1990s, the CIA and Pentagon funded programs on so-called remote viewing, attempts to use psychic mind power to spy at a distance, and military analysts even studied psychic warfare as a potential threat. These programs, like the infamous Stargate project, were eventually wound down, but they show that interest in mind-related technologies persisted. To date, however, no credible evidence has surfaced of any current MKUltra-style program secretly dosing Americans with mind-altering drugs. Still, the MKUltra history serves as a warning. Without transparency and oversight, governments might once again exploit science covertly. Making these videos takes a lot of time and effort. I don't have a studio, a computer, or a budget for premium stock footage. I work around my daily routines, studies, and family responsibilities, just to bring you stories that matter but are often forgotten or buried. If you found this video valuable, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep going. Thank you.